You know, it's almost like your birthday with a package from China, so let's go. I really love my self-technology, even it's bad sometimes, because with the Pandora's box jungle you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes it's pretty surprisingly good and sometimes it's pretty damn awful. But what I like about these Pandora's boxes in general, because it's just an all-in-one solution. They're creating like a tiny PCB board, because these things are still very compact. I can use them on all kinds of solutions. If you want to build yourself an arcade machine, you want to do something pretty damn awesome, but you don't want to have all the tinkering with the configuration, like for example with a Pi. This is just such an easy solution. Basically it's almost plug and play. But of course, like always, there are some pros and cons when it comes to these devices from AliExpress. But for the people who have no idea what is in Pandora's box, let's do a quick overview. So first of all, we're going to get active and non-active cooling. So there's a little bit of bummer also depending, like with the really old ones there was not even a cooler at all. So then we're going to get here the EDA connection, I love to call these. And with the EDA connection you can just plug it in your arcade machine. This is like a plug and play solution, and that's what I really love about it. So if you want to like modding an arcade one up, and Pandora's box is like a plug and play solution, no tinkering, but there are some limitations to the power and the things you can do with it. Then we're going to get all the connections that we can get. Here we're going to get USB, but take consideration it's very limited with controllers, and some have not even support for controllers. Volume control, we're going to get a VGA out, but the VGA out, that's the problem with this device. If you want to use this thing in an old arcade CRT, you need to have like the Pandora Box DX, only that one have the support for those monitors, an HDMI out and an input for 12 volt. So these things are very common. But let's talk about the mini one. So when you're looking at the mini one, this thing is absolutely mini. And what I do like about is if you want to use a Pandora's box inside of a handheld, or you want to do like a modding, this is like a plug and play solution too. You don't need to do a tinkering, and you can just have a lot of fun with this tiny mainboard. There is only one thing that I don't like about it. First of all, like the 4 ports doesn't even have like support of all the controllers. The same with the normal Pandora's box. It has support for controllers, but we'll talk about it later on, what is the problem with those things. So what you're going to get with this is a quite interesting concept. It comes with a very nice active cooling. What I do like about this thing is that it's very silent. Then of course we're going to get ourselves, here you can see them, we're going to get the connection pins again. And yeah, the connection pins do have the option to use this in an arcade machine, plug and play. It's super easy peasy. These things are basically preset so far I understand, so basically it's plug and play. Okay, so the other thing that we're going to get over here, we're going to get the connection. There's nothing on here, but you need to solder a connection or a button for getting into the settings. Another thing that we're going to get over here is 5 volt input type C. We're going to get this mini HDMI out, and then of course we're having an audio jack out. But the most convenient thing is the size of this device. And don't get me wrong, like the original Pandora's box is not big at all. And like the basic versions you can see here, like having this kind of a mainboard. But nowadays are even like smaller versions. But here you can see already, like when you're getting the mini, like it's the original Pandora's box is also getting very small now. So, but if you want to put this in an arcade machine, it doesn't really matter if you're going to basically use one of these 3 things. Of course, the mini is most of the time more expensive, and it's more like, I think it's more like a tinkering thing, because you need to have 5 volts for this board, and with these boards you can just use 12 volts. I think that is super convenient with these bigger ones. So if you have the space, the original Pandora's box is more than enough, and you don't need this tiny one. But okay, so we're going to get herself like the Pi 4 in the middle, the Pi 3 at the left, and at the right we're going to get the Pandora's box mini PCB. So what you can see over here, like the PCB is tiny. Here you can see like the differences in sizes. Like there are quite some differences over there. But when it comes to the power, there we're going to get a significant difference, because the Pandora Box Mini is basically like the low powered version. So if you want to play some emulation, and I mean like high-end emulation, the Pandora Mini, it doesn't even have the support for it. It is not even possible. But even the Pandora's Box Mini looks somehow like a Raspberry Pi, but of course not a one-on-one copy. You can see like this thing doesn't have the solutions when it comes to emulation performance. The 3B Plus, but especially the Raspberry Pi 4 nowadays, has so much more to offer. I think the Raspberry Pi is just a really great option if you want to play some high-end emulation. But the conclusion is, when you're comparing this with a Raspberry Pi, it's very simple. If you want to have like a plug and play solution, I love these mini boards. It's like plug and play, you hook up your controls and you can just play your stuff. But with the Raspberry Pi, it has so much more to offer. You can overclock, you can mess around with the system, you have so much more to play. And not to forget what you can play. Atomic Wave stuff that you can play on a Raspberry Pi 4, you cannot play it on this machine. But let's take a close look anyway at what you can do with it. How about the controller support? Yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer, but that is always like the problem with these Pandora's boxes. My Xbox 360 controller, that I think the most common one that is very comfortable, but also supported by many Pandora boxes, doesn't work very great. And the same goes for this one. Looks like a PlayStation 4 controller style, but it is normally like recognized by an Xbox 360 controller. A little bit of a bummer if you ask me. The only solution that we have in this video, we're going to use ourselves the PlayStation 4 knockoff controllers. Yeah, another thing is we cannot use the D-pad, only analog stick. I did some reconfiguration, but that's kind of weird. So when it comes to the controllers, it's a freaking hot mess. Okie dokie, so let's take a close look how you need to connect it. The only way we can do it is with the HDMI solution. And when you're plugging in the power cable, it goes on automatically. A little bit of a bummer, so if you want to plug it into an, let's say, mini arcade machine, you need to have a solution for the on and off switch. Let's plug in the HDMI cable. Then the power, you can see it goes on automatically. And what you're going to get is it will boot up in a couple of seconds straight into the menu. It goes quite fast in my opinion. And there it is. Ooh, kind of fancy. Alright, so I have powered on the system and yeah, it has been booted into the menu. So let's take a close look at that. At the right bottom corner, you can see that the device itself has been recognizing the controller. So that's what we're going to use, and let's have some fun. Just a quick overview of the menu itself. I needed to do some tinkering with the settings. I will show you what I mean with that. Okay, somehow everything is in Asian language and I have no idea how to change it back. I've been messing around with the settings, but I need to be concluding that this thing doesn't have English set up. But doesn't matter, like with some tinkering I finally noticed how to get into the menu. So what you're going to get with this, here you're going to get the option. Here you can see like the two arcade joysticks are not configured. So when you're pressing A, you can see they can basically turn it on and off. What you can say is like player 1 needs to be the arcade. So if you're plugging this in an arcade machine, with 1 or 2 players with the cable I've shown you in this video, then you need to do this like configuration. Otherwise, just use a controller and have a mini game system. Okay guys, so let's talk about what can we do with it. So basically, if you want to plug it into a 4-player configuration, it is possible, but here you can see we do have 3 and 4-player option when it comes to the game. But it's kind of a little bit of a bummer how you need to assemble this. Because with this model you need to use the controller configuration, in that case encoder boards, and then of course the original cable. It's kind of messy in my opinion, and Raspberry Pi is way more convenient than that. So when it comes to playing the games, what you can do basically with this is, yeah, just MAME, Neo Geo, the old school 8-bit, 16-bit stuff if you can find a couple of them. But it's more of the same when it comes to the games that we have seen before, like with the first generation of Pandora's boxes. Okay, so the first thing I'm noticing, like, they are using this weird filter over it. I think I can shut it down somewhere in the menu. But let's choose a character. The buttons are completely messed up, like my shoulder buttons, the L2 and the R2 are basically the select and start. It's kind of weird. And you also can hear like the audio is having this weird issue. So when it comes to the NES emulation, it's not the best I have seen. Oh yeah, the audio sounds completely different when compared with the original games. We do have the option to basically search for your games, but there is one minor problem. Everything is not in English, so the search function doesn't work at all. Oh, that's one epic fail. I did mess around with the setting, but I cannot get to put it in English. I have no idea how and when. That's such a weird thing. Alright, so next up let's try some PlayStation 1. And I find it quite interesting that this device seems to be running very well with the PlayStation part. The performance itself is quite good. It's still running on native resolution. I don't know what kind of emulator is running this, because there is no way you can tinker with this. Okay, so next up let's take a close look at some arcade gaming. And I've noticed like with PlayStation 1 runs very well. You don't have any issues when it comes to MAME. But the only thing I noticed, I couldn't find Mortal Kombat 1, so it's not really concerning. But most of the time these cheap basic boards really don't run those games so well. Like they're having like a lot of issues with Mortal Kombat. I don't even bother like thinking about Killer Instinct, stuff like that. And somehow when it comes to the arcade, I cannot do any moves with this freaking awful analog stick. Oh, it's completely ruining my gameplay. But I'm quite surprised to see how good this performance is, and the reason I just wanted to check it out here on the channel is like, I think this board has a lot of potential when it comes to modding. If you just want to mess around with, let's say, maybe make yourself a handheld, make yourself a mini arcade machine, you can do a lot of cool things with this. Super convenient. But despite the flaws this thing has, I think it's still a really cool piece of technology. Simply because it's a really plug and play solution. It's really underpowered compared with a Pi 3 or 4, but it doesn't really matter. I think this thing is pretty awesome. So you can do a lot of great things if you want to build yourself a mini arcade machine, or you just want to have like this tiny machine that you want to play some games with. Take consideration, controller support is pretty damn awful. I want to thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of this. Consider subscribing, hit that little bell, become a Wicked family, and I will see you in the next video.